Hi, this is a small tutorial on how to implement mappings between FHIR and openEHR using Mirth Connect. First, I will show you the basic idea of Mirth Connect, the basic architecture. So here, the tool Mirth Connect is an integration engine that works in terms of channels, communication channels, and each channel has a source and could have one or many destinations. The source is the entry point and the destinations are just the output. And what they have is a source connector that has a type, and the destinations also have destination connectors that have different types. For instance, a source connector could be an HTTP listener. So this will, when this channel is deployed, will create a web server to listen to on a specific path, on a specific port to receive information. Or it could be a TCP listener, so we'll receive TCP messages or HSM version 2 messages. Could be a file reader, so instead of receiving a message, in a communication protocol, we'll read a file from a certain location. Could be the local file system, could be FTP, Samba, etc. So a network file system. Yeah, and the destinations are similar. You can send this to an HTTP interface outside Mirth. You can send this to a file. You can send this to a database, whatever. Yeah, you can do many things here. And in the middle, what you have is in the connector and in the source connector side would be the first half to the left. You have filters and transformers, and also in the destination part, you have filters and transformers. The filters are to check certain conditions, and if the condition is not met, the message will stop there. Yeah, so the data flow will be here if this filter checks to false, the data will not go to the next step. And transformers, the idea of the transformers are to process data. So you can do many things. You can get an input and generate a different output. For example, you can get XML and generate JSON on the other side. You can also extract data from the input data. So for example, you can get a message that could be FHIR, yeah, and you can get different fields from FHIR and assign them to variables, and the variables will be available for the steps after this transformer. Also, the filters could be 0 to many, and the transformers. So here, this is really optional. You could have none, or you can have many filters. Also, the transformers, you can have none or many, and the same here on the destination side. Yeah, so that is the basic architecture. That is to help you visualizing what I'm going to show you right now. Yeah, so Mirth has two different applications. Yeah, there is the Mirth server that is running here. Here I have the Mirth server running, and here I have the Mirth administrator running. Yeah, the Mirth administrator is a front end to connected to a server to edit, deploy, and deploy your channels. Yeah, and create new channels. So here on the channel section, I have a new channel that is FHIR test. So I will show you how I created this one. And here, basically, what you do is you define the data types. First, you define the name, then the data types. So for this one, I will receive FHIR and I will output JSON. FHIR will be just a resource, and JSON will be the openEHR format. Yeah. And in the source, this is the source connector configuration. What I have selected here is the FHIR listener. This will create a web server that has FHIR characteristics. Yeah. So what you can select here is the port number. You can select which version of FHIR are you going to use or support. You can define the path for the URL. So the URL will be set using the path here and the port And these the gray fields is the fields that are calculated. You can't edit this, but if I change this, the URL will change. Yeah. And this could be this slash blah blah blah. Yeah, this is very configurable. And most of Mirth is this way. It's just point, click, entering options. Yeah, you have also options for the response if you want to generate a response or not. If you want to return a response or not, you have all the options there. You also have networking options like the max processing threads, etc. So there are a lot of networking options. And since this is FHIR, you can choose between supporting XML, JSON, or both. You can choose if you are going to support the history system, so the versioning, if you're going to support search, if you're going to support transactions. And then for each resource for this release of FHIR, you can also say, for this resource, I will support these operations. Yeah. So what I did is I turned off most of the operations, and for example, the capability statement, I set that to read. The bundle is all supported. Really, it's not supported, but I just set everything supported. Then I added the diagnostic report that is read with laboratory results. So here is read, create, and search, because those are the operations that we are supporting right now in the FHIR bridge for some resources, and also the observations below here, because those are also what we are supporting in the FHIR bridge. Yeah, so this is the configuration. Then what you can do is you can edit the filters. We don't have any filters, and the transformers. Yeah, and in the transformers, you can have, as I said, many steps for transformation. Yeah. Before doing this, what I did is I need to have a clear view of first of the mappings. So this is a diagram of the mappings that I designed for the FHIR bridge. So this is the body temperature resource. This is the representing the profile, the FHIR profile, and the data points that we have inside. Yeah. So in openEHR, the data points that we need is just the date and time where the measurement was done and the measurement of the body temperature. Yeah. On the right side, we have the openEHR template and the archetypes inside the template, and the arrows are the mappings that I implemented in the FHIR bridge. Yeah, the mappings that I designed first and then implemented in the FHIR bridge. So basically, we are mapping 3 dates and the measurement of the body temperature. Yeah, 2 dates are at the observation and event point or levels in the model, and the start time is at the composition level. Yeah, with that clear, what I did is, because I have an example for the of the data of a resource that is an instance of this profile in the FHIR bridge that was created or gathered by Renault. And for this, because I need an instance, a sample instance for the openEHR template, what I did is I went to the toolkit. I uploaded to my account in the toolkit the body temperature should be somewhere here. Here I have the template, and what I did is I generated an instance that is compliant with the template. So I came here, I choose composition, generate, and it generates an instance of this template, compliant with this template, and it's a composition. So basically I copied this instance here in the message templates. So here is the inbound message to this transformer, and this is the outbound message from this transformer. Yeah, so I'm using the transformers to actually modify the format. Even though both are JSONs, yeah, we are getting FHIR and we are retrieving an openEHR JSON. Yeah. So this example is already in the FHIR reach. This example was generated by the openEHR toolkit. Yeah, and when we have these examples here, we use them as message templates. If you go to message trees, we actually can read the nodes. Yeah. So what I want to do here is, for instance, in the first step of the transformation, I want to extract the patient ID from the FHIR resource. So if you go to subject reference, you will see that this is patient / 1234. I want to extract this 1234 from the reference, yeah, and set that to a variable that is patient ID. That is done with the mapper type of transformer. We have many types of transformers here. I will use just mapper and JavaScript, yeah. And this is basically extracting a data point, processing that with a mini transformation here. What this does is matches the regular expression, and the group is defined in the value part, and I'm extracting that group, the value part. That this is group 1. Group 0 will be the whole matched value. That will be patient / 123. So that is extracted from here, transformed through this small regular expression. This extracts just the part that I need and assigns that to the patient ID variable. This is done just by, for example, this thing here is just drag and drop. It's just, if I drag drop, this will generate that expression. That expression is E4X expression. E4X is an implementation of JavaScript with native support to XML. But since this is really a JSON, is not doing the XML transformation. The XML transformation is done for other data types. For example, if you receive a DICOM image, you can actually get the DICOM tags from the DICOM binary, because Mirth transforms the DICOM to XML, and with the XML you can have expressions like this and extract the values there. Yeah, but this is not DICOM and it's not important. And this variable will be assigned to something that is called a channel map, that is like a shared memory for all the channel. So after this step, the whole processing will be able to read this variable. Yeah. So if I select the next one and I go to reference, you can see here the patient ID is available. Yeah, these are the variables that I will be defining in the channel map and are available to use actually. Yeah. On this second step, what I'm doing is, because we have the patient ID in the resource, in the inbound resource, and we need in the openEHR API the EHR ID. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the EHR for that patient ID. Yeah, and if you see, I am executing here an AQL query, and the AQL is using that patient ID variable that I extracted in the previous step. Yeah, and this patient ID variable is also, you can use it just by dragging and dropping in the code, and it will generate the expression that allows you to access the value. Yeah. So this is just getting, hey, give me the EHR ID for this patient. Yeah. This is just Java code, because here you can write JavaScript or Java. Yeah, both. And then with the result that is a JSON from the server, I use the JSON parse from JavaScript function to parse the JSON, and here I am extracting the first result that will be the patient ID, if the EHR ID, if the patient has any EHRs. Since I was testing with an existing EHR, this is okay, but here I need to add something that checks if the patient doesn't have an EHR yet created, and return some kind of error. Yeah, that could be done very, very simple, but I wanted to do something that worked in full, yeah, the full flow working, and then we can check all the errors and border cases, etc. So we need to get the patient ID, we need to get the EHR ID, and also this could be written as a function that we can reuse from different channels. Yeah, that is called code templates in Mirth Connect. Yeah, so this could, instead of being all this code, will be just calling to a function. And the mappings, because we have this inbound, we will receive FHIR and we will try to generate an openEHR composition. This is doing all the mappings that we need. Is mapping the quantity, magnitude, and value, and mapping those 3 dates that I show you on the diagram. Yeah. So on the left side of this assignment is the expression that accesses this outbound message. This is the composition, the openEHR composition. So what I did here is I went to the node that actually contained the value for the measurement of the body temperature. And I can just navigate this. There are 2 items here, and I can see here, this is just a text. Let me check the other one. This is the comment. This is the measurement. Yeah. This is the measurement. This is the element that measures the body temperature, and then there is another that is a comment below that I won't use. So for instance, if I want to set a value that comes from the FHIR to the openEHR composition, what I do is I select these green nodes here. So for instance, magnitude, just select, drag, drop, and that will generate the whole path to that specific node. Yeah. And what you need to do is just to set that to something. And if you go to the FHIR resource and search for the value there, that is what I want to map here. And that's it. That will take this value from the inbound message and put that in a node specific data point in the outbound message. And I did that for all the values on the mapping. Yeah, this diagram. Yeah, so these arrows all have 1 line of code there. So after just dragging and dropping and assigning things, you can also, before assigning, you can also do value checks, and you can check everything is there. There are no missing values, no null values, etc. Yeah, and you will see that here there are 2 variables. Message represents the inbound message, and temp represent the outbound message. Yeah, and after we do all this will be the message that will be available in the next step of the channel. Yeah, with these values set. So the rest of the values will be set to the value in the template. So anything that I pasted here will be there if I didn't change it here. Yeah, that is interesting because most of the nodes won't change in the composition. Yeah, most of the nodes won't change. There are some nodes, for instance, that we might need to change. For instance, here we have and this is not mapped yet. It's because we didn't map the composer, because we might need to map this to something that comes in the FHIR resource. But currently we don't have information about that. So who is the author of this measurement? We don't have. Yeah, so we don't have something to map to the composer of the composition. So this will be something that we might need to change in the near future. Yeah, this value, for instance, this context start time value will be changed here with the value from the inbound message. Yeah, and in case we receive, for instance, if we receive a date that the format is not correct or is not the same that we use in openEHR, we could do here small transformations, and we can transform, for instance, this format into this format. It takes like 3 lines of code to do that, and you can write a function, and it's just define it once, and that's it. Yeah. Then this will be the output. Yeah, the transformed composition with the values from the FHIR resource. If I go to the destinations, here I have 2 destinations. The first destination is just to for debugging, for me to log the values of these variables that I defined in the previous steps, and those variables are available here. And I just detected a typo here. Is EHD ID. I will change that very quickly. So this is my mistake here. Is EHR ID. So now is EHR ID there and patient ID. So I will change this here. And this is the message that is available here for this specific destination. So this should be the message after the transformation that we did in the previous transformer. Yeah, and here I need to also change that to that one. The second destination is what we are connecting with EHR base. So this is an HTTP sender. We have many types of destination connectors here, and this is also point and click. Yeah, what you do here is you just put the URL of the server running, and since this endpoint needs the EHR ID, that is why I extracted the EHR ID before I did that little lookup. This is the way to reference that variable. Yeah, and you don't need to remember that because you can just drag it from the variables menu and drop it here, and that's it. Yeah, and you have a lot of options for the HTTP sending. So this is basically an HTTP client configuration. Yeah, so this will be a post to this URL. You can also add query parameters. You can also modify the headers. Since the headers for me are just fixed values, I just set the values here, but you can also, depending on something on your processing, you can also set the values for some headers to variable values, and you can actually here set a variable. Yeah, and this is the body of what I'm sending to that URL. Yeah, and this is just the encoded data from here, from the menu. It's just drag, drop, and that will be generated. Yeah, so that will be the openEHR resource. So the next step, that is what it takes to create the mapping. Yeah, this is a small mapping, but the process to create a larger, more complex mapping is the same. We just need to define more mapping rules. Yeah, I will save this channel and I will deploy this channel. Yeah, with the changes I just made. Yeah, when you deploy, I will clean up the logs. You can see here in the dashboard the deployed channels, the current status, and how many messages were received, filtered, queued, sent, and how many have errors. And you also have information about the last deployment date. So this is running and should be running on port 80, I guess. So I will just check that. And you will see here, this is our channel. Yeah, 80. So I will go to Insomnia REST client, and I have here a couple of requests. So the first request is to get the metadata. This is 80 FHIR/metadata. And if I execute that, I should get something back that says which resources and which operations are supported for those resources. Yeah, for example, bundle is there, capability statement is there. This is the configuration I show you in the FHIR connector. diagnostic report, read, create, search, etc. Yeah, and here I have an example that is sending readings of body temperature to the channel. The file. This is the Mirth Connect channel. 8880/FHIR/observation, because you need to use a specific endpoint here for a specific resource. So if I send this, and let me just capture the packets to EHR. This is capturing anything that is going to EHR base. So let me go back to Insomnia, send this. I should get a 200 and no body, because I'm not returning anything to the client right now. That could be configured. And you can see here all the transactions. The first transaction is an AQL query that is the lookup for the EHR ID. Yeah, if I follow this is just the lookup for the EHR ID, and this is the patient ID extracted from the resource, and I get an EHR ID here. Yeah, so that worked okay. And the second one should be the commit of a composition, and here you can see the EHR ID in the URL. And if I go to HTTP here, this is my generated composition with the values mapped from the FHIR resource, and we got the same resource back because I set the headers to be return representation. Yeah, and you can see here the values, for instance, of the body temperature are here. Yeah, quantity Celsius 37.5. Yeah, and that's it. This works. I'm getting the right values from the server, and also this is really fast to set up. Yeah, on the other side, what we don't have yet, because I need to take a look on how that is done, is validation of resources based on FHIR profiles. So how to add that step in the Mirth channel. I think that could be something that we can do in a filter, maybe calling a Java library. Yeah, so we can integrate Java code into Mirth Connect, so we can extend Mirth Connect with our functionality, and we can have a small program that actually does the validation of the resource against a specific profile. And yeah, that could be integrated in the code and could be done in a filter, because the filter says, if this is not valid, well, I won't process on the next steps, and that's it. So that is the role for a filter. So I need to take a look at that, how that is done, and also how the terminology validation is done. Currently, we are not using the terminology validation in the FHIR bridge. We disabled that because there are missing codes, so we are getting failures that we can't work with right now. But yeah, those are two things that could be integrated and improved in this approach. But I think this approach is faster than writing Java code for the mappings. Yeah, and it's always the same approach. It's the same thing. Is everything is done in the same way. You define your channel, you define your processing rules here and mappings, etc. And that's it. And then we post everything to EHR base, and this post can be reused. And here also, this is not code; it's just configuration. Yeah, so there are a lot of it's less code. So if this is less code, it's also less bugs. And this doesn't mean that my transformer, for example, this extraction of the variable, this is configuration, but this in the background generates code. And if you go to generated script, you can actually see the code generated. But if you use this form, this configuration form, the code that will be generated will be always the same and always will work. Yeah, so this is a big plus. I think speed and consistency and a standard way to do things. Yeah, so that's all. That's everything I have for now. Bye bye.